Okay, so very good morning to all of you. People online, are you able to hear me? Just let me know. Okay, I think it is proper now. I think we can start. Okay, in case somebody is watching this online on YouTube, okay, we have the KAVACH batch. From the KAVACH batch, today is the very first lecture of GS Foundation, which is starting from third, that is today. And today we are starting with environment. Right. So the people who are there, and in case they have any query with respect to how to what are the details about the course, etc., you can just see the link on the YouTube. There is also a contact number, so any details related to the GS Foundation program or the KAVACH can be known from this side. Okay, so that is one. Other people who have joined in, I think we'll just take a minute to settle down. There was, I think, some initial glitch in the streaming software right now. I think it should be fine. ठीक है. You can contact the team अगर आपको सिर्फ environment की classes, if you are, I think there is a query in the comment sections. If that is the query also, so you can also mention, just ask the team. I think that can also be done. So we can also have a look at that. ठीक है? Okay, so now I think we'll start and just have an overview of what we're going to do. Now, your environment and disaster management classes are going to start. So we're going to see two things. And today, in that sense, this is an orientation lecture, okay, broadly in the very first part. And after that, I'll also be telling you the other things related to how we're going to proceed. ठीक है? पहली चीज, there are first few things we would like to just understand here, right? When we see environment, more specifically environment, now environment after the merger of Indian Forest Services, okay? Now the prelims for the Indian Forest Services as well the civil services exam is now combined, right? So because of this, what you will now see in the prelims, on normally any given prelims you can expect from 15 to 18 questions, right? Out of 100 questions, right? Very first thing is the number of questions and the weightage of this has increased. The first thing. Second thing is the scope of, or I should say the interconnectedness of environment makes it a very unique subject. Okay. So when I say scope and interconnectedness, don't please think that environment is just single one subject. Environment is in that sense one of the most interdisciplinary subject, right? Because there will be some intersection of geography, as we will see, right? There will be some intersection of science and technology. For example, when I say geography, when I will even tell you about climate change, okay, why some regions have, let's say, extremes of temperature, and in that when I bring in the environment climate change angle, there will be a reference to geography. In any region, what kind of crops can be grown, what is the vegetation, what kind of trees are there, what kind of plants are there, and then what kinds of species are there, also has a linkage with geography, right? So when we do these parts, for example, when we do flora, fauna, when we do biomes, we again understand these components in detail. Fine. When I say science and technology, right? For example, right now we're in Delhi, right? Especially after Diwali, what generally happens is the air quality of Delhi, does it improve or does it become bad? If it becomes bad, you would have seen the AQI even surpassing 400, 500, 600, 700. Jitna bhi ja sakte hain, right? There is no limit, sky is the limit. Okay. When that happens, then you will see new devices, people talking about having air purifiers. There is a talk for smog, yeah, I should say anti smog towers. What is that? A lot of that is the application of science and technology, right? So you will see interconnections and scope, which also makes this very broad in nature, right? Of course, there can be some intersections also with biology when we go into the details of, let's say, bacteria and viruses, the different biotic and abiotic components. Okay? So this makes this subject very unique, number one, right? So number one point is there is a merger of the exam, and because of that the weightage has increased. This also we know, right? Then when we see the subject, not only are you covering it, so there is very specifically in GS3 the environment and disaster management section is asked from you. That is directly there in mains, right? But you will also see questions in GS1. This I often say. Many questions that you prepare for GS3 will come in GS1. This also happened just now. The 2025 mains, which has just concluded, if you see the paper of GS1, one direct question is, what is the impact of sea level rise on the, let's say, SIDS, small island developing states, or I can even say the small nations, let's say the island nations. What will the impact of sea level rise? This is a topic we always do also in GS3, for example. Is the examiner wrong in asking you the question in GS1? I'm asking you. क्यों? GS1 में geography है. And this is not the first time this has happened. Even if you go back, you will also see, for example, what is the impact of climate change on cryosphere. ठीक है? इस तरह के questions, cryosphere. This was a question that was also asked 2017 में. So my point is, not only are we covering, of course, this will be is a part of GS3 in mains. You will also see this in GS1. Not just GS1, you will also see this in GS2. How come? For example, you have Article 21. What is Article 21? Right to life and liberty. Now, right to life and liberty also includes the right to clean environment. This was mentioned in a very famous case, the MC Mehta case. Last year, there was a MK Ranjit Singh case. Don't worry about the cases here. As I move along in the respective sections and headings, I will tell you. Right now, I'm just giving you an overview of how interconnected the subject we are dealing with is. So, in that MK Ranjit Singh case, it also said right, or let's say Article 21, also includes the right to fight against the adverse effects of climate change. Okay, so what does that tell us? Even in GS2, they've asked you specific environment case laws also. In GS2, you are supposed to read about the tribunals, etc. So you also have something known as National Green Tribunal. Agar is pe question aayega, the question will be in GS2, yes or no? And you will also see case studies related to even environment, which have a bearing on environment, right? For example, related to, they will also mix environment plus disaster. Let's say there's a flood in an area. How would we tackle that? You are the DM of the district. What you will do? So the subject knowledge that you will have from GS3 would be applied across papers. That is the first point I'm trying to make. This also means you can also, like we saw in internal security, there will be years direct essay will be asked from environment or has a bearing on environment. Go back almost every alternate year. 2024 there was a question related direct to forests. In 2022 there was a question again related to environment aspect. So even 125 marks that you see is also having a bearing on it. Okay? So when we see environment, not only are we seeing almost, I should say, nearly 1/5 of the paper, slightly less than 1/5. In some cases this can even go to 20 questions also. But even if I have a moderate estimate of 15 to 18 questions, that is what you're getting. You have a lot of scope with, and it is not isolated questions. Some questions may have a mix of these subjects also. Then there is environment, and environment related questions could also be present in other areas as well, right? This is there, right? And then, of course, goes without saying, even in interview, right, whatever your optional be, every year, for example, when the interview happens, generally some COP means conference of parties. Every year you will read about COPs. Okay, this is the most recent COP that has happened related to climate change is COP29. Now we are looking forward to COP30. COP हमारे लिए क्या है? These are international conferences, and we look forward to, is there a new agreement that has come out? Is there something looking that we should look forward to? Fine. So even in interview, always be prepared that there will be questions: how can we arrest climate change? How can India deal with climate change? How vulnerable is India? And of course, if I'm saying climate change, environment is not climate change. Environment includes a lot of other topics also, right? Also from pollution, also from waste management, a lot of things that you see in day to day life, you will see questions also based on that, right? Questions, simple points on over extraction of groundwater, these kind of questions have come in 2025 mains also, right? So which means you have, or we are dealing now with a topic which has a lot of bearing. But more than this, when we say environment, so environment in that sense, of course, has a mix of static topics, right? And I'll tell you how I have bifurcated the subject. This is a subject which has a huge current affairs overlap. And when we say current affairs, many a times now the new range of question is something in the current affairs inspires a questions also from the static, right? So this totally is the, let's say, prerogative of the examiner on how detailed question they want to make and how detailed question they want to test you on. Fine. So this is something that is happening. Other than that, when you see environment, right, for us, we will be going through PYQs, both some of them related to prelims and even for mains. This becomes again a gold mine for us to understand the mind of the examiner. And when you go through especially the prelims related PYQs, every year it will be very difficult to find a pattern. Is the examiner sticking to it? Sometimes what they will go, sometimes they will go overboard on species. Okay, they will ask you such peculiar details about species that you would wonder kitni detail mein padhna hai. Okay, the very next year there hardly would be any question on species. Then the focus would change to maybe pollution, maybe climate change, okay, or some other part. So which means, and this will always be, because see, why does environment for many students is the Achilles heel? What is the Achilles heel? Let's say it's a pain. It is a pain point for them. Why is that? Because the examiner keeps on changing the pattern. There is no set weightage. Questions aayenge, no doubt about it, but the range of questions, their difficulty, and then the many times the issue becomes we don't have one solid source to cover, right? So the format of our classes here in KAVACH is going to be, we will integrate all these things, okay? And when I'm saying static and current affairs, so I will make sure at least 2 years of current affairs would be there in your notes, at least 2 years, right? Because I've been teaching this subject for some time. So even for some of the species that we do, which are there in the news, I'll also give you some brief background, which has been existing for some years. And there have been instances, environment may, if you see PYQs, sometimes questions that I have been asked go back to 2 or 2.5 years. Does that mean we have to read all the news of 2.5 years? Not really. Our focus has to be again laser focused. We have to, of course, focused on 1 year of current affairs, right? Then only update the other additional parts, right? So this is almost going to be how we're going to move ahead. This is there, right? And in between also, like we've done, I'll be giving you some assignments and you will have your weekly answer writing. So make sure at least the mains part of the environment, right, is there. Now, because this is a part of GS3, right? So in mains, your answer writing, facts, examples, slowly and steadily, we will build along this. Now, the classes that I have planned here for environment here will ensure that even if you have no base, okay, let's say you don't have any base in bio, you don't have any base in some of the subjects, we will start from the very bare minimum. In fact, the initial classes are only basics of environment. Okay, in fact, in today's class, why after I'm done with telling you the scope of the subject, I will only be telling you some basic terms like what is environment, let's say, what is ecology, okay, and even on these basic terms, there have been questions that have been asked which simply tests the most fundamental understanding. And many times, if you know these terms, then making sense of the other news updates is not a very difficult task, right? So this is how we are going to proceed, right? We are going to decode a lot of these sections. Okay. Now, how the topical linkage, or let's say the themes, are there, and which after this I'll also tell you some of the PYQs and what should our approach be, right? Because I think if some people are also watching on YouTube, they are more interested to know what all the themes are we going to cover. For example, the very first theme for us is the basics of environment, right? And this is something that we should not ignore at all, right? When we do basics, right, of course we go into the definitions. We have many definitions here. Then there is a unit which is a very important unit, that is ecosystem. When we do ecosystem, we also do the functions of an ecosystem in detail. We also cover the types of ecosystem, for example. Okay. In types, we go into terrestrial. Terrestrial means land based. Aquatic means water, right? This is again one of the basics of it. So, of course, I'm writing terrestrial, aquatic, because when you're done with this, your knowledge of the subject is far better, right? I've written biogeochemical cycles. Here, of course, we cover, for example, nitrogen cycle, phosphorus cycle, etc. You will see every year, some of the questions will be coming directly from these topics or inspired from these topics. But it is equally important for us to cover the basics of environment, right? Terrestrial, when we do it, we will again analyze the different forest areas, the different desert areas, the areas where you have grasslands. If there are grasslands, what kinds of species would be found in those areas? So we will have a lot of variety and diversity. Similarly, when I say aquatic areas, okay, so we will see, for example, in some areas, for example, if I'm talking of, chalo, let's take a simple example, dolphin. Okay, how many of you have heard about dolphins? Do we have dolphins in India? Okay, when I say dolphins in India, are we aware that there are certain types of dolphins do we found in India based on the water, or let's say based on the river? Can you give me any example? So basically there will be, and we will understand, there will be three types of dolphins, for example, found. One in the river Ganga, so that is Gangetic river dolphin. You also have, especially in the state of, let's say, Punjab, okay, you will have the Indus river dolphin, okay, and then you also have Irrawaddy. Irrawaddy river dolphin is found approximately in which area? So we'll see this, that it is there in Odisha, okay, we'll also see that in Odisha also. So that, for example, is an example of aquatic ecosystem. Just taking a couple of points here. I gave you the example of dolphin, and while saying of dolphin, I talked about river Ganga. The moment I say river Ganga, what comes to your mind? So that is the geographical part. Think from environment perspective right now. Let's say in the current times, what are we talking about? Polluted, okay? It is polluted in that sense. What about this river? Of course, you can say, nahi sir, right now it is also flooding. Of course, you are right. But any other thing? Polluted. Have we seen images of foams, huge foams in this? We have seen instances of it's this pollution. Now, when we do environment, right? So we will see first of all what will be the consequences of pollution, right? Direct consequence would be on aquatic species also. Can it lead to death of these species? Decline of these species? Yes. So when we do this, so of course not only do we see the consequences of pollution, we also go into details of how to solve, what can or what steps can be taken to solve this. We also then analyze the government steps. Then this becomes a very contemporary topic. We also see, for example, what challenges are there in river Yamuna and Ganga cleaning, that despite spending crores of rupees every year across a span of many years, why does the problem still persist? Right? And the new range of questions, then directly some of these questions appear in mains. What are the industrial sources of river pollution and why river pollution continues to be a huge challenge for India? So a lot of topics that you will do. Now, generally people think aquatic system में बस हमने कुछ species के नाम याद कर लिए, let's say dolphin, dugong, maybe some turtles here and there. Our job is done. That is only one part. Of course, you need to know the species, you need to know the nomenclature, right? But beyond that, the contemporary aspect. In that sense, maybe there is some new technology to deal with the water pollution, river pollution. We should also know about that, right? So this is how slowly and steadily you will build the base and you will understand these particular areas, right? That is one. Now, one major area is, though this will take certain time, we'll do terrestrial, aquatic, biogeochemical cycles, etc. Then we also do a section of biomes, and when we do biomes, of course, there is species. So all these things are properly covered. There's a unit that is known as biodiversity. The unit is biodiversity and the conservation of biodiversity. This again happens to be an important part, right? Biodiversity and conservation of biodiversity, right? Then the next part that we move into, we will also see is legislations. Are you aware about any environmental related legislations? कोई भी सुनाओ आज तक. चलो, one is, let's say, WPA. Somebody, so WPA becomes Wildlife Protection Act, right? There will be many such legislations which we will see and analyze, right? What is happening? Are they good enough to save the biodiversity? Because when you see conservation of biodiversity, we will get to know what are the threats to biodiversity. Yes or no? How can we conserve it? One of the ways, legislations. So there will be many legislations, not only Wildlife Protection Act, we go into Forest Conservation Act. Don't write abhi all of them, but I'm just outlining. Forest Conservation Act 1980 होगा, Environment Protection Act 1986, Water का act separate है, Air का act separate है, right? We go into what is EIA, Environment Impact Assessment, for example, right? We go into Biodiversity Act of 2002. बहुत ऐसे एक्ट्स हैं, फॉरेस्ट राइट्स एक्ट ऑफ 2006, नेशनल ग्रीन ट्रिब्यूनल एक्ट ऑफ 2010, ओके, एंड कंपनसेटरी अफॉरेस्टेशन मैनेजमेंट, so this is a separate act of 2017 2016, okay. So legislation, you will also see question in prelims appearing from these topics, that is legislations. Then another important topic is a theme, for example, for us is pollution and waste management. The new type of questions that you are seeing both in prelims and including in mains are coming from these areas, okay. I hope this is visible. Pollution and waste management, which includes different types of pollution. Normally you read about air pollution, you read about water pollution, and so land pollution can be soil pollution, but UPSC is also asking you now more nuanced questions. Air pollution बहुत broad है, right? UPSC ने क्या पूछा आपसे? Ozone pollution. Okay, so within air pollution, one small component is ozone pollution. So there can be questions based on that also, right? So now you will also see the rise of specific questions on pollutions, right? This is there. When I say waste management, don't you see waste management is a huge problem in India, especially a big urban problem, right? If you see around you, don't you see a lot of littering and wastes constantly, right? So how does a country, first of all, like India, first of all, in India, there is a huge rise of, let's say, consumerism. People are consuming a lot. And that also includes people use a lot of electronic devices. So not only there is a rise of e-waste, there is also a rise of har tarah ka waste, because solid waste also, liquid waste also. And we will see the challenges in the management of that. And you can also imagine, right, even right now, when you go outside, many times, the waste is not getting properly collected. Okay, people loiter, litter. How many of you know the area of Gazipur? Why is Gazipur famous, or why is it infamous for? Huge landfills. Okay, there are some areas that boast of skyscrapers and big tall buildings. वहां पे जितनी बड़ी बिल्डिंग नहीं है उससे बड़ा वेस्ट के पहाड़ हैं. Okay, big mountains of waste. And imagine the kind of life people would have there. Most of the people there are from the informal sector, right? If somebody is living in the huge area of waste, would they have health problems, right? A lot of these chemicals would leach also to the ground. Okay, second, the air would not be good. Okay, so this have long term health impacts? These impacts would be more severe on women, children. So that is also one aspect to it, many times ignored, right? Then another equally important part, this is a very important part, climate change. And we will spend considerable time on climate change, because climate change, it's not just a term for us, there are multiple layers to unpack. And when we start, of course, we see what is climate change, what is not climate change, the impacts, the consequences, but more than that, yahan pe we also go into various new technologies, etc., which are used in capturing excess carbon. If you see the paper of 2025, which just happened, okay, the prelims paper, there was a question that was asked on direct air capture. Okay, this was a huge news of last year, even in my foundation classes of last year, which means even before the exam, and even in the previous part, because I have a habit of incorporating a lot of current affairs. This was directly mentioned. But many times the student would have not covered this at their own end, because direct air capture kahan se yaad aayega aapko ki this is going to capture excess carbon dioxide. Okay, and this actually became the biggest facility in the world. That was why it was in news. So climate change is one area where you will see both current affairs questions, anything that is a new breakthrough discovery, something which stands out. If there's a new agreement, if the countries have come together, kuch COP mein kuch naya ho raha hai agar, or any basic simple static concept. How many of you have just done any basics of environmental science in your school? 11th, 12th में कभी पढ़ा होगा? You would have heard about terms like greenhouse gases. Okay, all these things. We will do all of this again. Okay, but my point is, maybe some of you, at least some basic terminologies you have been exposed to in your school and perhaps college, right? Planet Earth, or all the issues planet Earth is facing. So climate change, not only do we see the technology around it, we also see mitigation. After mitigation, we also go into other details. For example, we see climate change related governance. Okay, so that also becomes a very important part. Across all these sections, there are, every year you'll find issues. And the last theme, I don't have enough space, so what I'll do, themes karke I'll also write the last part. The last two themes, one broad theme. In fact, let's do the first one pehle. Okay, so here I'm talking about, so let me change this. Here, energy is a micro theme which I'll take up from the environment perspective, and in that we will talk about India's transition. India is slowly and steadily transitioning from the fossil fuels to the renewable sources of energy, not entirely, but in some fraction. We'll also see that how this transition is happening. Okay, here also some element of technology, etc., will be there, which we'll also examine. And the last theme overall that we'll see is sustainability. ये काफी important theme है, many times ignored. Anything which can have a potential green application. When I say green, आपने सुना होगा दिवाली के टाइम पे green crackers. Okay, now when you read green crackers, the examiner can also be interested to know how are these crackers green, how they emit less smoke almost, right? That is just one example. So there are various examples. Let's say, if I say climate smart agriculture, okay, this can also be one element here. You will see green buildings. Okay, so there are many such examples in sustainability. बहुत बार क्या होता है, those examples sometimes become the stem that makes the examiner want to ask you a question, right? For example, normally when you see the construction of roads, we use asphalt. There is a lot of greenhouse gas emission in road construction, but now there are new materials that are coming in which help in reducing the greenhouse gas emissions from road construction. From the overall buildings and construction sector, there are new materials that can be used. There are new houses that can be created. Jesse, in urban areas, we say urban areas are concrete jungles. Yes or no? If there is too much of concrete in the urban areas, what is the problem? Hone do? So it leads to trapping of heat. And if I compare the same urban area to a rural area, the rural area, of course, is cooler. The urban area is hotter. This also, there's a term known as urban heat island effect, which also we'll examine. So when I'm saying sustainability, this is a broad topic. It not only includes the technologies, it includes the applications, it also includes materials, the development. This will complete your topic very properly. Okay. So if you have just had a look at, right, basics of environment, biodiversity, यहाँ पे जब species करेंगे etc. We will also be doing adaptations of species. This is also a new theme that you see UPSC asking you. Okay. That for example, adaptation बहुत simple सी चीज है. Let's say for example, you have normal forests and trees outside, but in desert areas, do you have normal trees or do you have cactus, for example? Cactus. So how is cactus able to survive? When you see cactus, it will have a thick fleshy stem. That is how it is going to survive. So in different areas, different species have different mechanisms. Some species wake up in the night and they are active during the night. Some are during the day, right? Now you have your morning classes, so I would assume you are active in the day, right? There's some students who will join maybe the evening batch, they'll be active in the night, yes or no? We also have different patterns based on our own convenience, okay? So adaptation is also something for different kinds of species. We'll also have a look at, okay? Okay. Let me see if there is any doubt yet for the people online. Okay. Are we able to follow till here? Okay, let me just refresh my screen. I think I'm not able to see some of the recent comments. Okay, ठीक है. So these themes are important. Definitely, maybe if you want, maybe you can take 30 seconds or so. At least the themes you should write. I think most of you have written it here. In case somebody has not, you should do that. Okay, because this is how my lecture are going to proceed. Initially, the initial lectures are going to focus more on the basics, right? And that is how we're going to proceed. Okay. Now, if we are sorted on the themes, and please remember, when we are doing these themes, you will see an intersection of both the prelims and the mains aspect, है ना? Because many times the challenge for us is integrating both of them, so that I'll ensure ठीक है? Okay. Okay, so I think people online are also till here you've been able to follow. Let me now tell you some of the important. So this we've already seen the importance of this in prelims also, approximately 15 to 18 questions. Similarly, mains mein this is direct, but even in GS4 and GS1 you can expect questions, and also questions in essay. Okay. As I move along, I'll also give you some questions to just think about. Okay. In fact, aaj bhi I'll give you at least some open-ended questions. Answers to some of them you may find in the upcoming classes. Ki haan, this is how we will think about it. Okay. Now, this is the syllabus. Please write the syllabus. And sometimes when you look at the syllabus, please, it says the syllabus of prelims, general issues on environment ecology, biodiversity, and climate change that do not require subject specialization. Many of you may contest the claim कि सर ये क्यों लिखा है that do not require subject specialization. Okay. Now, this is the syllabus that is properly given for prelims for environment. But now when you see the range of questions, they've gone in so much of detail, okay, that if you merely do what is written here, you will never be able to attempt more than 4 or 5 questions in the exam. इसके beyond बहुत कुछ पूछा जाता है. But still, we should know exactly what the syllabus is. Right? In some time, we'll also see differences in very simple terms like what is environment and ecology, etc. So we'll also have a look at that. Okay? Biodiversity, climate change, in our themes, all these three are already there. But beyond that, also new themes that we've tried to decode and bring them all together at once, which can give you a very comprehensive coverage. Okay? This is the syllabus for prelims. Again, if you now see the syllabus for mains that is given, only these three keywords are there in the syllabus. Only these three. In mains, the one first keyword is conservation. Then you have environmental pollution and degradation. And third is EIA. So that means EIA is such an important topic for mains. And many a time students, they will cover everything in mains for environment, climate change, biodiversity. They miss out on it and directly you will see a 15 marker on EIA. This happened in 2024 also. Right? And if you complete, see, नाम क्या है? Environment, impact, assessment. Okay? Just from the name, I've not taught this to you yet. Okay? Even for people online, what would be the meaning of this term? What is it supposed to do? The name, the meaning, oh sorry, of course the term says EIA, Environment Impact Assessment. Any guesses? If you have a habit of reading your newspaper, almost every month you will see one article on EIA, maybe some small articles. Okay, ठीक है. Does the government do it? Are there expert panels and bodies who are supposed to do this? Who does that? Any idea? हम just नाम को, we are just breaking down the name. बताओ, सोचो. The name simply says, देखो, environment impact assessment, right? This is one of the most hotly debated topics and even things that is spoken about. The reason is, let's say there is any, I'm saying any project. It can be simple dam, okay? It can be an industry, it can be any construction, right? Let's say that particular project requires to clear some forest because that would need a land. If not a forest, some people are living, maybe they have to be rehabilitated. So let's say it can be any project. Let's say it can be a dam, okay? It can be any nuclear plant, कुछ भी हो सकता है, for example. Earlier, what used to happen? Earlier, okay, we only used to see, let's say, the kind of money it can generate, the kind of jobs or the kind of employment that will give. आप सोचो ना, let's say I am a company, you are the government. I am saying, sir, I want to have a project. This is the impact of the project. It will take me 5 years to build the project. This amount of money you will be generating, this project will be generating employment. Allow me clearance. This is my land, etc., etc. Right? So traditionally, we focused more on the economic side. Okay, what is the problem with that? अगर हम सिर्फ इकोनॉमिक्स को देखें, लेट्स से देयर इज अ, एंड आपने इसको क्लियरेंस भी दे दिया. The state wants more development. The state has said yes to the project. What is the problem in this? Okay. और सोचो, सिंपली सोचो, मतलब क्या दिक्कतें होंगी? ऐसा कोई प्रोजेक्ट दिमाग में आपके आ रहा है कि सर इस प्रोजेक्ट में तो ये नहीं हुआ था इसलिए प्रॉब्लम हो गई? How many of us are aware about Bhopal gas tragedy? There have been many, not just Bhopal gas tragedy, there have been some big industries and that have led to huge pollution, many times unaccounted and not even imagined. There have been plants आपने बना, plant बनाया आपने, that was for some purpose, but maybe some gas leaked or it led to some other kind of pollution that was not imagined or foreseen, which is why there is also EIA. Now EIA not only, so EIA focuses on 3 things. This is a simple Venn diagram. So EIA focuses, number 1, on the economic aspect. That is fine. It also focuses on, but most importantly, environmental aspect. This intersection is known as sustainable development. This diagram I'll draw many a times. अब आप प्रोजेक्ट की सिर्फ, यू आर नॉट जस्ट सीइंग द इकोनॉमिक कॉस्ट ऑफ द प्रोजेक्ट, यू आर गोइंग बियॉन्ड दैट, यू आर ऑल्सो सीइंग द social cost of a project. What will be the impact of project on the vulnerable communities, on women, children, other, right? What is the environmental cost? Let's say 5 years down the line, can there be any leaks? How will the untreated water be used? How will the polluted water be disposed? बहुत बार क्या होगा? There have been older plants, they simply dump all the water in the rivers, which is why rivers get polluted a lot. In fact, when we also examine Yamuna, we will see one of the major reasons for pollution of Yamuna, when Yamuna starts, okay, and almost when it enters the very close to Delhi, till there it is doing very well. But why does almost all of a sudden the pollutant levels of Yamuna increase? Because it is getting all of the, let's say, untreated water, polluted water from the industries. That is one of the main reasons. Yes or no? So when we see EIA, in theory it looks very good. Yes or no? You are examining environmental cost, social cost, all these three costs. Challenge क्या है फिर? If everything looks so good, what is the challenge? The challenge actually is that in projects like EIA, for a developing country, you do not have enough experts, number one, right? Second क्या challenge हो सकता है? बहुत बार these may not be done very comprehensively. Sometimes the government wants more focus on development. Yes or no? If everything is scrutinized to a lot of detail, what will be the problem? Project pass ही नहीं होंगे आपके. This then tells you this is a fundamental tussle, a fundamental issue of economics versus environment. And I have very carefully said economics versus environment. Many a times people think या तो economics हो सकती है या environment हो सकता है, but ultimately we have to have economics and environment. Both these two things are not mutually exclusive. So as we move along our lectures, and this is also what the governance is about, this is also what the international and the national community is saying, that ultimately if we want sustainable development, you have to integrate both of them, and of course all the three of them. They cannot be looked in isolation. Okay, so that is also part of your syllabus. We'll also examine this in detail, and we'll also have proper examples where in India this was being done, what is the shortfall, etc., etc. This also we will have a look at. Okay, that is there. Okay, understanding of syllabus. So abhi to we've just syllabus mein to you also know there are merely some topics, which is why I focus more on themes. So for us, if we are able to see the themes and understand these themes, this is going to add a lot of value to our preparation. Okay? Okay. Now I'll just have a couple of PYQs. You don't have to know the answer here, but this I'm telling you sometimes is the level of detail. In some questions they will ask you simple question. Sometimes it is even more detailed. ठीक? Lion किस किसने सुना है? बचपन से lion सुन रहे हैं, right? Lion. Let's say this is a specific question on lion, and you will sometimes see the extent of detail they will go. Okay. Abhi, we are not considered on the answer. Lions do not have a particular breeding season, unlike big cats. Cheetah. Anything that you see in the recent news in the 1 or 2 years related to cheetah. क्या cheetahs news में थे इंडिया में? कैसे बताओ? News पे क्यों थे? Africa. What is the link of Africa and cheetahs? Okay, chalo. People online, have we heard about these cheetahs? So the moment you see this, of course, this is a question of a past, let's say previous year. Okay, so what are we seeing here? Cheetahs were in news. India got cheetahs from Namibia, from South Africa. And please note the question is not just about cheetah here. The question is also comparing your knowledge about lions and cheetahs. These are big cats. Okay. And one more reason, when this question was asked in that year's current affairs, India had launched the International Big Cat Alliance. उसमें lions भी हैं, उसमें cheetahs भी हैं. उसमें of course there are more big cats. So just see the nature. Unlike male lions, male leopards proclaim the territory, etc., by scent marking, etc. and then you have to choose between the options. In this kind of question, there is a comparison of species also. There is an interlinkage of current affairs also. Right? I'm just telling you a couple of questions. We are not going to discuss all the questions here. We will also have separate PYQ sessions also in detail. Okay? That will also help you. Now, for example, with respect to pea family, okay, soybean, groundnut, horse gram, plants. So again, when I will do these questions, and this is a question we often do in our class when I discuss with you nitrogen cycle, right? So nitrogen cycle में we do this, but sometimes the way they ask you question, आपको लगेगा ये कहाँ से पूछ लिया मुझसे? ये तुमने पढ़ा ही नहीं कभी, okay? But the point is, if we have done the respective topics well, we will again have a fair idea about how to cover these points. ठीक है? ऐसे जैसे कि which of the following best repeated faults in sea level, present day marshland, mangrove सुना होगा आपने? Okay, we'll see prominent mangroves in India. Why are they under threat, etc. So there will be locations that are in news. Okay, other kind of, so again some of the questions which I'm telling you, let's say marsupials. Any idea of what are marsupials? सुना इससे पहले कभी? नहीं सुना? चलो, कंगारू सुना है आज तक किसी ने? Kangaroos, do you see in India? Have you seen in Australia? Let's say you watch the India-Australia test series, all the matches, you will see kangaroos. Kangaroos have a pouch, okay, in which they feed their young ones, right? So these are the pouched ones. So इसी पे एक सवाल है not naturally found. Actually, this is also a kind of a current affairs inspired question, right? Where they are found, कौन से areas में मिलते हैं, नहीं मिलते हैं. A lot of these questions can also be solved via reasoning also, okay? So this slowly and steadily as you understand. अब इस क्वेश्चन में कहां मिलते हैं कहां नहीं मिलते हैं also requires you to know the distribution of species around the world. So when we do species, for example, I will tell you, for example, which, you know, equator, around equator, would you have more rainfall, less rainfall? More rainfall. So you will have proper vegetation. The species around equator are different. As I move away from the equator, I will have more of extremes of temperature, right? Let's say I go towards the poles. Poles में तो you will not have hardly any rain, right? Very cold temperatures, let's say in the Arctic or in the Antarctic, वहां पे species अलग तरह की मिलेंगी आपको. So the diversity of not only India, we also cover the diversity of the world. Let's say Amazon rainforest में किस तरह की species मिलती हैं? We will also see that, right? India में भी Western Ghats में what kind of species are there? We'll see that. So slowly and steadily, these kind of questions will make sense to you because I also map the continent. Some prominent species, let's say in Africa or Madagascar के आसपास, because these are some very rich in species. Yes or no? So just giving you just a small idea. There have been many questions in the past, and of course अलग अलग तरह से सवाल पूछते हैं. जैसे इस तरह के सवाल भी होंगे एक्ट बेस पे. 1972 Wildlife Protection Act. Okay, WP has been asked many times. Sometimes back-to-back questions have been asked. Okay. But let's say which species enjoys and what is some of the provisions, and not just in 2017, this is only one snapshot. Across years you will see questions on legislations, for example. So that is why we have also broken down small themes जो भी एग्जाम में हमसे पूछी जा सकती है, right? The emerging themes also. So if we prepare it accordingly, our job gets done. Okay, so that is one important point for us to understand. Okay, as of course there are many such questions. I'll also give you some, or let's see, we'll also see some questions. These are some of the mains related questions. Okay, couple of questions only we'll see. As we move along in respective points, we'll see other questions also. जैसे explain in detail photochemical smog. How many of you have known the term smog? उससे ज़्यादा important, how many of you have felt the smog? Smog means especially in Delhi winters, you see a huge, let's say, very poor visibility. Yes, the flights also many times get delayed because of this. That is what smoke plus fog combined is smog. Question में क्या पूछा है इसके बारे में बताओ. This is something you will read every year. Okay. Similarly, you have heard terms like global warming. What is global warming? Let's say, let me ask you, what is global warming? Warming is what? Temperature increase हो रहा होगा. Is the temperature really increasing? बताओ टेम्परेचर बढ़ रहा है? No, it is increasing, but very, you would not feel it as much, but only maybe in the peak summers, let's say you feel it. When I say temperature is increasing, we have a reference point also. We'll see the temperature has it increased over a period of 200 years or not. Okay, so when we do climate change etc, ये सारे simple, बहुत simple questions हैं, but ये question सीधे mains में आते हैं आपको. Let's say coastal erosion. This was, let's say, in the news, 26th session of COP, Conference of Parties, for example. उसके क्या outcomes हुए? Okay, कुछ green grid initiative etc. So my point is just to tell you that a lot of questions that you will do across themes, you will find direct questions. And especially in mains, environment is that section. If you've done it well, almost all the questions you will be able to answer. Okay? Similarly, if we thematically prepare also, right? So what will happen? You will have a lot of confidence going into the exam, because after that, after the classes, I focus that you should focus more on the PYQs, practice the PYQs of prelims again and again. And when you sit for some mock tests, etc., you will have a lot of accuracy when going in the exam. Right? So that is how we cover these, some of these parts. Okay, fair point. हाँ. अच्छा, अच्छा, somebody has mentioned ozone depletion. अभी कुछ दिन के बाद you will also have the world ozone day, बहुत जल्दी आने वाला है. I'll also tell you that. उस दिन शायद क्लास भी है अपनी, तो उस दिन देखेंगे ओजोन के बारे में कुछ. Okay, so the trends that we are seeing in this is comparing prelims and mains. In mains you will have more, let's say, direct questions. Second thing, of course, the questions are very much integrated, which means interconnected, multi-dimensional. So slowly and steadily, you will also get a hang of it, how to understand and how to write, right? Mains के लिए सबसे important है, slowly and steadily we should have a hang of examples, right? And from the initial classes only, I'll also be putting a lot of contemporary examples in your mind. That will help you understand a lot of these topics fairly well, right? How to make sense of some of the points, etc. वो भी हम देखते रहेंगे, right? And main thing is overall, last में very important point is linkage of the current affairs. Okay. So these are the trends that we will be following overall, right? Now how the class is going to be conducted and notes etc. So पहले से I'll just make sure that we are on the same page. First thing is, okay, we will be of course going theme wise. Now here please note that whatever headings are there on the slides or whatever I'm writing on a blank slide etc, okay, you try to note that and try to make these simple bullet type of notes. Okay, if there is a very specific area which needs more elaboration or dictation, I will do that, but largely speaking many points I will be explaining, and I would expect you to make some running notes also. Okay, however, if something is very descriptive, let's say some of the outcomes of some COP or some very precise specific points, this also I will be dictating so that there is no confusion that what should be written, what should not be written. Additionally, there will be some diagrams which either I'll be drawing or I will be showing to you. Environment में diagrams बहुत दिखेंगे आपको अलग-अलग जगह. Diagrams will also be very unique. Okay, so you should try to practice them. Okay, many times you can use directly that in mains. Second, the diagrams also give you a lot of clarity. Okay, for example, aquatic zones हम देख रहे हैं, the different nomenclatures. So I have a habit of including a lot of diagrams that we will see also, right? So this is there. Now ideally, for example, let's say this is your page. अभी से कोशिश करना, margins छोड़ो, right? So for example, let's say this is a part where you write the heading, or even let's say you leave this part. Okay, let's say we are doing basics of, let's say, environment. Let's say this is the heading that you draw and then we move ahead. आप अपने points notes बनाते जा रहे हो, यहाँ पे कोई diagram आ गया, कुछ points आपने लिखे, right? Leave a space here because anything that you see in the current which can be added, and we will be adding some things. Okay, तो जो क्लास में कर रहे हैं वो कोशिश करेंगे इसमें लिखेंगे. The last 1/4 space or whatever you are leaving, this can later on be left for any other updation that you want to do. Or if you saw कि अच्छा इस टॉपिक पे, let's say क्लास में हमने एक टॉपिक पढ़ा इकोलॉजिकल नीश, There was a PYQ that was also asked. This is a good way to connect it. Okay, then your notes become a living document. We have a constitution. Okay, Abhay will tell me how many times it has been updated. 106 times. The most recent amendment was Nari Shakti Vandan Adhiniyam. Okay, so it is also getting updated. So our notes also should get updated. That is the main concern I want to have, right? Because environment may be, how many, there will be some many students here who are also preparing for 2027. Okay, so because this is a highly current affairs oriented subject, let's say dolphins पे हमने कोई चीज पढ़ी, something new has happened, some new sanctuary, something has been created, so you will add it to the respective margins. If you're not comfortable doing so, whatever topic we are doing, जब वो खत्म होता है, always leave 1 or 2 pages so that you can add. Okay, if you have a habit of making digital notes, तो ये issue आपको नहीं आएगा. Or if you have a habit of making notes on A4 sheets, then also it would not be there. But then A4 sheets को manage करना, and बहुत बार क्या होगा, let's say you have 15-20 loose sheets, एक sheet भी गायब हुई, and sometimes if you don't have a marking, फिर याद नहीं आएगा ना which page is supporting which other page. That also becomes tedious to manage sometimes. Okay, so that is one. Okay, now in the practice plan, what is there? Let's say after every class, okay, you are getting, or you will be getting, worksheets. The worksheets are, you will have for MCQ practice. Okay, so let's say today, the moment your class gets done, I think almost around the end of lecture, you will have MCQs, 4 or 5 MCQs. Okay, just to get the hang of the subject, right? And slowly steadily, when you keep on practicing them, रोज you will have a hang. तो ऐसा नहीं होगा कि that MCQs keep piling up. ऐसा you should not do. Whatever question is there, you try to attempt it. Okay, if the question is difficult, you can again come back and ask. Otherwise, the solution is already given. Hardly, let's say 5 questions or 6 questions, depending on the subject. So this will be there. The people online also, you will have your, let's say, worksheets. I'll also announce when they are, the moment they are released. Okay, you should know this. Second thing is, you also have your weekly answer writing sessions. Okay, which also is a part that you should not miss. Let's say there are 2 questions. So slowly and steadily, even if you take baby steps, one step at a time, right? And initially when you write answers, it will take time. Please don't think that ideally you will have your seniors or friends जो 7 minute में एक 10 marker लिख लेंगे. But that is the last almost stage when you actually have to give the mains. Otherwise, people who have been very honest, sometimes it takes 30-35 minutes to write a 10 marker initially. Because हर एक word सोचना पड़ता है. Every time we double check, we doubt ourselves whether this is right, this is wrong. But this is something that is integrated here in your foundation only. ठीक है, इसका आप जरूर make the best use of it. The worksheets have to be done with sincerity, followed by weekly answer writing, and of course in the classes itself, I will also be doing the PYQs of respective prelims and mains topics. Okay, that is going to be there. Now, this is a question many times asked. Okay, how should we integrate the newspaper and how should we, let's say, talk about these things? So I'll also give you my points on these part. देखो पहली बात, in the initial classes, follow the classes, right? If you are, how many of you have a habit of reading newspaper? किस किस की habit है अभी यहाँ पे? ठीक है? How much time does it take to read a newspaper? 25, 40, 40 to 45 minutes. People online, do you also read newspaper? No, if you're reading it, it's always good, है ना? When you read your newspaper, now because this subject is environment. With the time now, when you're exposed to some species, some topic, now your knowledge on those topics will be far better. Your eyes will also be trained. So when you see the newspaper, okay, I'm not asking that you should make notes and very detailed notes from the newspaper, because now almost the popular magazines here also at Sunya, you have the daily current affairs dose, all of that being shared, right? तो काफी कुछ आपका काम आसान हो जाता है. But at least if you see the newspaper with the first hand, okay, that helps process the information far better, right? Otherwise क्या होगा, बोलने को तो आप एग्जाम से एक दिन पहले, let's say you go through a big bulky document, you will not be able to memorize it. So it is always better to go through them, and environment is one such topic. अब इसमें if you have, let's say, if you see the digital or even the print, there will be sometimes some image or some caption is also there, right? If something is very unique, I would want उसको कहीं पे capture करते रहो, लिखते रहो. ठीक है, लिख भी नहीं रहे हो तो take a screenshot. Let's say there is an image of Bhitarkanika, okay? And in Bhitarkanika, there is a mention of, let's say, salt water crocodiles. मैंने बोला, क्लास में आपको याद हो गया, ठीक. बट बहुत बार क्या होगा, इमेज पे कोई एकदम से रैंडम सम फ्लैमिंगो और समथिंग यूनिक इज हैपनिंग. ओके, सम एक्टिविटी, सम स्पीशीज हैज बीन रिलीज्ड फॉर द वेरी फर्स्ट टाइम, लेट्स से इन अ वेरी स्पेशल एरिया. These things are slightly unique. Keep a tab on them. That's it. I'm not asking you to remember them or cram them, but definitely, if possible, make a list of it. Most of these current affairs will already be covered in your classes. Now, when I'm saying, you are right now doing the foundation classes, fine. Post this, you will also have the prelims boot camp. You will also have the mains boot camp, which is nothing but we will again revise the whole subject before the prelims in an integrated manner. This will also get done. The current affairs addition and revision part would also get done. Similarly, before mains, you will also have your mains revision classes. Okay? So foundation is there so that you get an extra edge. Okay? And you understand all these topics in detail. Uske upar jo prelims crash course, because then the pace and the breadth of that is faster, right? That will also make sense. So if possible, you try to integrate some of these elements. Okay, if you have a habit. Otherwise, nahi to just abhi focus on the classes. Slowly and steadily, I'll tell you how to do that as I move along. Okay, that is one. Just say there have been prominent articles, Delhi AQI COP29 that happened in Azerbaijan, Baku. Okay, चलो एक छोटा सा homework लिखना. Where will COP30 and bracket में लिखो UNFCCC happen? Where? UNFCCC means United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. छोटा सा नाम है UNFCCC. United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. ठीक है. Just you have to see where this is going to happen. It will hardly take a time. Okay, but I'll also be telling you what things are to be expected, for example, here as we move along. Okay. इस तरह के articles अभी after we are done with almost half our classes, when we move to other part, 2024 is set to be of course अब अगले साल the article, what will be the article? And we will again understand what is average temperature. How can somebody says warming हो रही है? Okay, so slowly and steadily, right? 1.5 degree Celsius. What is the meaning of 1.5? ये term आप बहुत जगह देखोगे. हर न्यूज़पेपर लिखा होगा 1.5 degree या 2 degree Celsius rise is going to be catastrophic. तो ये आया नंबर कहां से है? I could have said 0.5 also. I could have said 1 degree also. Where is this coming? Okay, एक छोटा सा एक होमवर्क ये भी लिखो. The logic या rationale behind 1.5 degrees. Slowly and steadily, all these questions will get answered in the classes itself. The logic and the rationale behind 1.5 degree increase in the Paris Agreement. The logic and the rationale behind the 1.5 degree increase in the Paris Agreement. Paris Agreement काफी डिटेल में we'll also examine. ठीक है? Global warming is the theme that we are also saying. Now, this is also one question that a lot of people ask. What sources should be there, okay, to follow, etc. Ab there is one source that is perhaps one of the best ways, okay, is your the biology class 12th NCERT. The last 4 chapters, okay, all the facts, okay, and the students of the KAVACH, you already have the access to these NCERT Arambh lectures. How many of you have access to that? वो वाले lectures देख लेना. These 4 chapters I've already covered in that. Okay, but let's say somebody is watching here on YouTube, they also want to do it. आप simply इन chapters को पढ़ो and do it slowly. आराम से पढ़ो. अभी भी जब पढ़ोगे you will get to know, अरे ये concept already NCERT में दे रखा है. Okay, this is almost a gold mine. Merely 4 chapters. This you can do. Okay. Additionally, I think there is also in class 11th, there is also one NCERT on chemistry, if I'm not wrong. These are very specific, just single one chapter on air pollution also. Okay. Which also goes into the details, hardly 7 or 8 pages, but even this can be added. So air pollution chapter is also equally good. That can be done. Okay. So this is one source that is a pretty good source. You can also watch the NCERT lectures, the people of KAVACH. This you can do. Other than that, I will integrate these relevant portions in my lectures. But many times, some people want to read some important books or some this in the PDF form. This is also available. You can also, let's say, जो पूरी book होती है, अगर आप if you go to the NCERT site now, you can also download individual chapters. Fine. So those of you who are comfortable with making folders etc. एक environment का folder अलग से बनाना. Okay. In that folder, one thing can be NCERT. उसमें these 4 PDFs will be added. Okay. Let's say this is a folder of NCERT. Okay. Later on, if you can also make बहुत बार students also make their notes as PDF. तो आपके खुद के notes हो गए. Let's say your class notes, and then whatever clippings you are getting, relevant clippings from the newspaper that you can put in. And last is बहुत बार क्या होता है, you go through certain topper copies, right? Topper copies में मुझे कोई बहुत अच्छा diagram दिखा, EIA, anything that I find of good value. So I make a separate folder, let's say for diagrams. Again, I'll tell you, in the current word and age, there is plethora of information. Problem is organization of information. Okay, if you have done this, अब आप सोचो आपके लिए काम कितना आसान है. ठीक है, डायग्राम्स आपने अलग अलग रखे हैं, क्लिपिंग्स एक्सेट्रा, या फिर लेट्स से मैप्स, you've also had it separate. Okay, this will also help, right? This is there. Now there are, of course, you can also ask, sir, ठीक है, this is fine, but how to follow current affairs? What is a very good source? There are two sources. One is this, one of the best magazines that one can go through, Down to Earth, and there is also Monga Bay. In the Hindu, if you follow the app or if you follow the website, there is a specific section, okay, on environment. Or I'm saying, please note, I'm saying or. अब Indian Express में भी now there is a separate explained section. एक general explained section है, but एक section अलग से climate change पे भी है. Okay. अब this is, of course, this will take time. I'm not asking you. This is only for the people who always have a habit कि सर बताओ, सोर्स तो बतानी पड़ेगा, बिना उसके आपको बाहर नहीं जाने को देंगे क्लास से. So there are, of course, many sources. I have a habit of going through some of these sources. Now, are you required to read every magazine of Down to Earth? सवाल आएगा. Not really, and it would not be possible for you. Similarly, Monga Bay goes in a lot of detail क्योंकि Monga Bay की audience global है. Okay, Monga Bay also has an Indian proper, let's say, blog and channel, etc. A lot of some of the questions in the recent years you can find in this. But what should be the way? Should you be starting it? नहीं, अभी नहीं. ठीक है? How? What is the better way to do it? Is go. This is important source. ठीक? So for you, after you, let's say for you, first do your classes very well. Okay? Classes are there. All ये जो सारे sources है, this is only for current affairs. Right? Now, after your NCERT etc., let's say you will of course follow your class notes, which covers both prelims and mains. Okay. Now, any single source, any single, I'm saying, right? Of course, these are multiple sources. Any single source, let's say you're done with all the classes, you are around 3 months or something, 4 months before the exam, you can just quickly go through some of the articles if you want to update. When I do my crash course etc. for prelims, I already incorporate that, but of course this class is on YouTube. Maybe some of you may not be joining that, but still you want to be a very updated, sorted etc. These are the ways to do it. Okay? So this is one. In the later times I'll also tell you how to do that, but please remember, I am not saying, again I'm repeating कि आप सोचो चारों चीजें अलग से पढ़नी पड़ेगी. ये करते करते आपको रोज के 3 से 4 घंटे एक्स्ट्रा लगेंगे, right? Because these are highly specialized. Their work is to create new articles on even small points, which is why sometimes what happens in India, we are a very geographically and, let's say, biodiversity rich country. Almost every other day a new species is getting found. New species of lizard, turtle, etc. क्या आपको याद हो पाएगा इतना कुछ? क्या जरूरी है? नहीं. ना याद हो पाएगा, ना जरूरी है. So when we, let's say we create content etc. for you and we deliver it, we have, and we go through the PYQs, the expectations, what is more important. So हमेशा you have to draw this boundary and draw this line, right? When an environment as a subject becomes tough, some questions are tough, people go into extremes कि नहीं सर tough question में कैसे भी करके मेरे को ये करना है. अगले साल क्या होगा, वो थीम ही नहीं पूछी, पता चला. All your that let's say hundreds of hours that you put in. So never be egoistic on one or two questions. Those tough questions will never decide the fate of even you or the exam, because in the exam, in the prelims, you will always find it is the easy questions that we get wrong that actually cost us. And there will be years, and I will also be telling you very honestly, there have been years when environment was very difficult. 2023 UPSC cutoff was hardly 75 marks. One of the reason was environment के जो questions थे, half of the questions आप कर नहीं सकते थे, राइट? ऑफ कोर्स हाँ, धोखे से अगर आंख बंद करके चार मारे उसमें एक सही हो गया, दैट इज सेपरेट, बट ऑफ कोर्स डिड द स्टूडेंट्स डिड नॉट हैव नॉलेज अबाउट इट, दीज वर वेरी टफ क्वेश्चंस, बट दैट चेंजेस एवरी ईयर. 2024 में दे अगेन मेड इट स्लाइटली मॉडरेट. 2025 में बहुत डिफ्यूज कर दिया तो क्वेश्चंस बने, बट अदर सेक्शंस दे गॉट मेड इट मोर टफ. सो एग्जाम बहुत ही ऑसिलेटिंग है. ओके, what you as a student must do, you should prepare every subject and give it due importance, which means you should not leave any subject. Now here the weightage is very high in environment, so it goes without saying that we have to prepare it well. Okay, are we getting some clarity on the sources and how to follow that? So again, I'm repeating at the very last, this is very important. Those who want to read it, I will already be covering it in my classes, but still if you want to read it, fine. First go through these class notes, first build your base. बेस के ऊपर ही अगर कुछ डेकोरेशन करना होगा, this is there, right? And generally for updation, I suggest hardly take 2 or 3 days, but this is done relatively closer to the exam. Okay, so that you just sift through the articles. अब आपने dolphin, Asiatic lion, or let's say dugong, you have read this in the class. कुछ भी नया आया, आपने आर्टिकल से ऊपर से देखा, अच्छा ठीक है मैं कर चुका हूं, I'll move ahead. And in our notes, only those things should be there which we forget or that is not covered. So notes should not be duplication of article. Many times people come to me, sir आज हमने editorial पढ़ा, हमने notes बनाए, almost they write editorials around 1200 words, they will write 800 words से 700 words के notes. आपको याद होगा 700 words of notes, right? Writing that will take minimum 1.5 hours, and then slowly steadily you will be discouraged and you'll stop making notes from them. So even if you make notes from the editorials, let's say that editorial is important for your optional, let's say, you should not spend more than, okay, hardly 5 to 6 points में summarize करना चाहिए the core argument of the author, right? And this would come with practice. Okay. हाँ, जो करंट, हाँ ओके, स्पेशली द करंट फेज में जो आपका इन्वायरमेंट हो रहा है, एंड ऑफ कोर्स इन करंट फेज मेनी थिंग्स आर बीइंग गेटिंग डन. इन दैट द you first follow those articles जो चलते जा रहे हैं, ठीक? The moment this gets done, they will also make a lot of sense, and there will be some overlap. So what you have done here, okay, because this every month this will keep on getting added and updated, fine. So after you are done, आपका main repository होगा आपकी foundation class के notes, fine. उसमें भी most of the current affairs would get done, but let's say some other month on month जो भी add होगा, this you can integrate. So जो the people who are already in the KAVACH or let's say who are in the foundation, you then don't have to worry about all of this. ओके, बिकॉज वो सारी मेहनत आपके लिए अलग से करंट अफेयर्स क्लासेस में हो रही होगी. ओके, नहीं जो, हाँ अब जो स्पीशीज आएंगे ना, व्हेन आई डू स्पीशीज आल्सो आई विल आल्सो टेल यू. सी इन करंट अफेयर्स फर्स्ट इज टू हैव द इंफॉर्मेशन इन फ्रंट ऑफ यू. उसके बाद वी अप्लाई फिल्टर व्हाट इज इंपॉर्टेंट देन व्हाट इज नॉट इंपॉर्टेंट. ओके, सो एज यू गो अलोंग एंड एज यू सी द पीवाईक्यूज आल्सो एंड द ट्रेंड्स आल्सो, देन वी विल आल्सो पुट अ मार्क कि हाँ भाई ये जरूरी है, ये नहीं जरूरी है. एट शूटिंग अगेन थिंग्स आर वेरी कॉम्प्रिहेंसिवली कवर्ड, पर उसमें क्या होता है, इट आल्सो क्रिएट सम बर्डन ऑन यू टू रिमेंबर. सो एक बार इसको हो जाने दो. Okay, we will again sit and we'll again discuss how to then navigate and finally finalize what should be done. Because if I'm able to put a boundary, अगर मुझे पता है मुझे इतना cover करना है, okay, and if I cover that and if I revise and re-revise, our job is done. As simple as that. ठीक है? So this is a very, let's say, pertinent doubt that you've asked. The moment I do biodiversity with you, एक बार मैं फिर से doubt आपका लूंगा उसमें. ठीक है? Okay. अब बताओ अभी any other doubt that we have so far here till now? नहीं? ठीक है. Now let's see, today we're going to cover some of these important points. At least I think I'll be able to cover till here. We'll see some basic terms. We'll see what are biotic, what is abiotic, what is levels of organization, ecotone, niche. A lot of these questions have consistently appeared in the exam, and we are just opening up the topic of environment, right? That is why my initial classes are only labeled as basics of environment, right? Because this is a continual topic that goes along. Okay. So सबसे पहले let's start with the very basics here, okay, and slowly and steadily I'll also be building on some of these aspects. Okay. अब देखो, the moment you see a term, and in fact there is this term environment here, I'll also come to this slide very shortly, but I'll tell you, you will see 2 or 3 terms interchangeably. Okay. One term, these 2 terms, let's say, sometimes we say the topic we are studying is environment and ecology. Yes or no? So what is the difference between these 2 terms? Right? Very simple terms. When I say environment, आपने सुना होगा ना, the environment of my, let's say, area or of my room is not conducive for studies. Okay, that is why sometimes people change their environment. So what is environment? Is environment anything that surrounds us? Is it very local? तो इसमें just simple keyword याद रखेंगे, anything that surrounds us is our environment, which can be this class also. All of us are here, right? Now whatever surrounds us, do we have any living beings in the class? कौन है लिविंग बींग्स? हम ही लोग हैं एटलीस्ट. हमारे अलावा कौन है लिविंग बींग्स यहाँ पे? ओके, फेयर. सो यू हैव लिविंग बींग्स. डू यू ऑल्सो हैव सम नॉन लिविंग बींग्स जैसे कि? अच्छा, ओके, ओके. सम ऑफ दीज एलिमेंट्स, मटेरियल थिंग्स, एनीथिंग एल्स? एनीथिंग दैट इज नॉन लिविंग. हाँ, हाँ. तो लेट्स से, नहीं नहीं, वो दैट इज ऑल्सो नॉट ट्रू. जब आप बायोटिक देखोगे ना, तो इवन सम बैक्टीरियाज, वायरस, वो भूल गए आप. The moment if I'm speaking, I'm also inhaling some of these bacteria right now. Okay. So there are some living components. Living components are also known as biotic components. And non-living components are known as abiotic components. Okay, very prominent and very, let's say, basic thing to understand. Biotic as well as abiotic components are there, right? Now, if I move into, so anything that surrounds us, it means it can be a very small room. So this means iska scope can be small. It can also be huge. Let's say if you go to a big stadium, everything that surrounds you in the stadium can also be that environment. Yes or no? So when I say surrounds, this is also location wise or area wise. It can be both small. Okay, it can be small as in a small room. Okay, can be huge, big, even auditorium, etc. I can give even more examples. So जो terms हैं उनकी बहुत simple level पे we should know what these terms exactly are and what they exactly mean. Okay, so we've seen what is biotic and abiotic, and abhi I'll also tell you this biotic क्या हो गया? Living. Okay, now I'll just, let's say, open on, let's say, what is biotic and abiotic. Examples of biotic can be, chalo, let's say humans, you're saying. Can we have organisms? Organisms can be many. Of course I can divide this is either into autotrophs. ये terms अभी समझ में आ जाएंगे. Auto, you know what is auto? Self. Autotrophs are the ones who make their own food. Best example इसका क्या है? Plants. They make their own food. Okay. There you have autotrophs. Then you have heterotrophs. Okay. And the, for example, plants ने खाना बनाया. Let's say somebody eats a plant. Let's say you have a rabbit, deer. And the rabbit or the deer, let's say, is eaten up by a lion. Okay. Do we see all of this in the nature? Yes or no? So of course you have your human beings, etc. ये बहुत अभी simple है इसका, और better organization I'll make it as I move along. So when I have, you have autotrophs, you have heterotrophs, and you have decomposers. Autotroph ने खाना बनाया, right? Plants make their food by photosynthesis. What happens in photosynthesis? In the presence of sunlight creates, this is glucose or sugars, and you have oxygen, for example. Abhi ke liye just focus on these three terms. Slowly steadily I'll tell you the proper food chain, food web. Just some terms I'm introducing this to you. Okay, good point Surya. Anything, everything that surrounds us affects living organisms. Fine. Organisms जैसे कि autotroph हो सकते हैं, they make their own food. Abhi I've given you just one example, plant. There are other organisms who also can make their own food apart from plants also. ठीक है, अभी के लिए सिर्फ plants लिखा है हमने. ठीक. Heterotrophs can be, so you have plants which will be, let's say, eaten up by rabbit or a deer. Later on I will sub classify. I will also tell you primary consumer कौन है, secondary consumer कौन है, apex predator कौन है. Yes, but abhi right now I'm using a big broad umbrella term, heterotrophs. Heterotrophs, what they will do, they will eat up the autotrophs. Okay, and then you have decomposers. Let's say a plant or an animal has died, decomposers will decompose on it, and this is how the whole cycle operates. Yes or no? So you have in biotic factors, of course, humans, organisms, and within this only you will have their different bacteria, viruses, etc., etc. All of this is a part of biotic factors, right? What are abiotic factors? Non-living. pH. Soil factors को बोला जाता है edaphic factors. Soil हो गया, pH, temperature, yes or no? Air. Many factors I can add here. These are non-living. And precisely because abhi to maine, I've just given you 4, I'll also keep on adding abhi later on. The moment these factors change, कहीं पे pH ज्यादा होता है, कहीं पे pH कम होगा. If the pH is more, is it acidic or is it basic? देखो pH, what is the neutral pH? 7. If the pH is 6, 5, 4, it means the water, etc., that is acidic. It means if the pH is lowering down, it becomes acidic. If the pH is increasing 8, 9, 10, that becomes basic. Yes. Now, if in an area the pH changes, the organisms also will face stress. Yes or no? अब इसी में सोचो, just imagine, let's say river Ganga, all of a sudden huge hot water, yes, some polluted water from an industry is thrown. Will the pH change of river Ganga? Yes, it will change. Similarly, soil या edaphic factors, will they also influence the plant? Yes. In some areas, जैसे when you have proper soil, okay, it is not, let's say, contaminated by a lot of fertilizers, okay, or if it has not been removed, the topsoil is not removed, that area will have better productivity. वहां पे plant growth faster होगी. Yes or no? As opposed to an area where you have too much of soil pollution, यहाँ पे growth less हो जाएगी. Will temperature also impact? Yes, temperature will also impact. So my point is, biotic factors are interacting with abiotic factors, and abiotic factors are also influencing biotic factors. This happens all the time. Same for us. Let's say when we are speaking, if the air is there, air can also be polluted, air can also be clean. If the air is clean, you will also feel better, our organs feel better. Otherwise, what would happen? Irritation, asthma, so on and so forth. Yes or no? Can we say? So abhi ke liye, what have we just said? Abhi we have just seen a term known as environment. Environment is anything that surrounds us. Okay, it can be small also, it can be bigger in size, depends on the range of comparison. It includes both biotic as well as abiotic, which means living as well as non-living components. There is an interaction between them. Both of them are not separate, they will constantly interact with one another. That is what? Environment. Now, what is ecology? देखो, the moment you see this term in any term, जैसे एग्जाम्पल दे रहा हूं मैं, लॉजी इज कमिंग फ्रॉम अ ग्रीक वर्ड लोगोस. लोगोस का मतलब क्या होता है? टू study. So when I say ecology is the study of, अब eco क्या है? The study of, oikos the study of, which simply means the study of the interaction between the organisms and their environment. तो अगर मैं स्टडी कर रहा हूं किसी चीज की, then that becomes as a discipline, that becomes ecology. In simple terms, environment is my surrounding, but if I study that, then that becomes ecology. Okay, and this can be divided in two parts. So there are two types of ecology. One is auto ecology, one is syn ecology, SYN. Auto ecology simply tells you, if you analyze one species in an area, that is auto ecology. But if I analyze interactions of multiple species, that is syn ecology. Let me give you an example. Okay, chalo, let's take Assam. In Assam you have Kaziranga National Park. ठीक है, the kind of examples which I'll give you, I would want ये सारे कुछ example कहीं कहीं लिखते रहो. ठीक है, as Assam has around many national parks. Okay, 7 national parks, and now even the 8th one is supposed to happen. One of the very prominent one is Kaziranga. Okay, Kaziranga. Now Kaziranga is very famous for one horned rhinos. Okay, the maximum concentration of one horned rhinos are found in Kaziranga. अगर हम सिर्फ वन हॉर्न राइनोस की स्टडी कर रहे हैं, सिर्फ इसकी, दैट विल बी रिगार्डेड एज ऑटो इकोलॉजी. इफ आई एम जस्ट एनालाइजिंग द स्टडी ऑफ वन हॉर्न राइनोस, दैट इज ऑटो इकोलॉजी. Whereas in the same example, let's say we again go to Kaziranga, but in Kaziranga now we are also going through all the other species, not just one horned rhino. So not just one horned rhino, but I'm also looking into, let's say, if there is any other species, जैसे deer अगर है वहाँ पे, okay, or let's say if there is any lion, okay, or there are any other species in Kaziranga, then that is syn ecology. But if it is only one species, then that is, the study is auto ecology. Okay, this is just one example I've given you, right? Just write one more homework. Kaziranga is famous for big five. मैं आपको चलो दो देता हूं example. When I do species, this answer will come, but I would want आप देखते रहो इनको. My first homework in Kaziranga is, one is, what are the big five? आप सिर्फ search करोगे आपको मिल जाएगा the big five species of that Kaziranga is famous for. Big five. One, of course, you know, is one horned rhino, which means 4 other species you need to know. Second is, see the map of Assam and you have to search national parks of Assam. Right now I've told you there are 7 and even 8th is in consideration. There are 2 recent national parks in Assam. Okay, so one is Dihing Patkai, one is Raimona. Now interestingly, let's say this is your Assam. Assam's 6th national park was, this was Raimona. I'm writing this as 6th, and it was the westernmost national park, and the easternmost happened to be Dihing Patkai. This was the 7th one. Now your homework is, there are maps of Assam outlining all the national parks. You just draw that with your own hand. Okay, in that, then your point is, there is a river that goes along Assam. What is the river? The river is Brahmaputra. अब मेरा सवाल क्या आपके लिए, you have to see whether Kaziranga, let's say ये river है Brahmaputra, Kaziranga lies to the north of it or to the south of it. This is your homework. This means there are 2 national parks. One lies to the north of Brahmaputra and one lies to the south of Brahmaputra. Right? So when we do environment, we do it in an integrated manner. आप ऐसे अगर करते रहोगे ना across the span of your classes, अभी तो ऐसे थोड़ी ना, ऐसे you have to see and you have to be then sure. Okay, so here you have to do two things. One, you will map very simply, or you see the map, take a screenshot, whatever works for you, right? But my question is in reference to Brahmaputra, what is there? As I move along, I will also tell you more details. So क्या होगा when we do the species part? Otherwise, if I directly tell you in species section, अच्छा हाँ भाई काजीरंगा में ये होता है, आपके दिमाग में नहीं बैठेगा. But along the famous areas around India, if you go through it, that will help. ठीक है? Okay. अच्छा, talking of sources, there is also a very good funny source if you ever want to have a light moment with the environment. There is in the Hindu, you can just write, there is a particular person, Rohan Chakravarti. Rohan Chakravarti creates very good cartoons on environment, very specific on environment. These are highly informative. Okay, कभी भी मन करे आप देखना, very witty in nature and they are very contemporary. Okay, so green humor करके इनका एक आता है. He creates cartoons. He also publishes books, by the way, and the green humor section of Rohan Chakravarti. So many a times na, वैसे अब आजकल we know today is the age of memes. People understand best via memes. These are very good, very funny cartoons. बोल रहा हूं मैं कार्टून आप देखो एक कार्टून में कितनी इंफॉर्मेशन पैक्ड होगी एंड इट विल आल्सो बी सटायर ऑन द सोसाइटी. देयर आर समटाइम्स द स्पीशीज दैट आर डिस्कसिंग विद देमसेल्व्स. दिस इज वेरी गुड. यू विल आल्सो एंजॉय दैट. चलो, so this is one thing that we've seen. Okay, now if you come to it, one second. Okay, we were here. Now please have a look at, we have seen environment. Okay, let's say this is a huge environment. What is environment? It is defined as the surroundings or the conditions in which an organism lives or operates. Okay, it is the surroundings or conditions in which the organism lives or operates. Number one, it is the sum total of all conditions and influences that affect the development of the organisms. तो यहां पे है क्या क्या components हैं? Biotic and abiotic. In this whole definition, the only thing that stands out for me is, बाकी points you will be just able to write. So what is it? Surroundings of conditions in which an organism lives or operates. Okay, sum total है which affects the development of all organisms. The organisms can be both, यहाँ पे living भी हैं. Of course, you also have non-living या abiotic entities also. Yes. So you have biotic components as well as abiotic components. Fine. So that is also one thing that is to be known. Here just ये याद रखेंगे keyword. The keyword for us is environment. So in environment, the keyword is surroundings. Okay. So that is one thing that we would remember for ourselves. Okay. So that is the first part that for us to understand. Now here, in very simple terms, these are two things. One is biotic factor. Okay. One is abiotic factor. I'll give you 30 seconds. You can just note this down. Okay. And as I move along, most probably in tomorrow's class, I will go into each abiotic factor and tell you the influence of that on plants also and influence of that on animals also. Okay. So when I say abiotic factors, are these living or non-living? Okay, these are non-living. अभी के लिए लिस्ट वाइज लिख सकते हैं. लेट्स से एयर है. Salinity. What is salinity? The salt content. Okay. Soil. अब salinity से अभी के लिए how many of you have known the term mangroves? Mangroves सुने हमने. Mangroves are known as salt tolerant plants. They can survive even in high salinity. In fact, अभी भी जो आप देख रहे हो ना, a lot of flooding that is happening, a lot of disasters. It is happening why? Because a lot of mangroves have been cut down. अगर mangroves बचे होते, okay, then these problems would have not come. Okay. Soil is known as edaphic. These are edaphic factors, soil related. Temperature is also one. Light is also one. Tell me the difference between temperature and light. दोनों में क्या अंतर है? Are these same or they are different? How are they different? What is temperature and what is light? Very good, ठीक है. What is light? Many times students ask me, sir, दोनों सेम ही तो हैं. Light है तो temperature है, temperature तो light है. Is that true or is that not true? Temperature is again a good point. Degree of hotness or coldness. Okay. What is light? चलो एक बहुत सिंपल तरह से आपको बताता हूँ. You know sunscreens are there. Sunscreens protect us from harmful UV radiations. Okay, which means sun, when it gives out light, it has a different spectral quality. UVA होगा, UVB है, UVC है, and other components also. So when I say light, light में एक term होता है spectral quality. So over a span, there are different wavelengths of light that is coming in. Okay, so that यहाँ पे इसलिए सिर्फ एक keyword देखो, wavelength. This is very different from temperature. Many times people have this misconception कि दोनों same ही तो है. No, they are not same. And it is the quality of light that also determines photosynthesis. Not all light is useful for photosynthesis. Only a specific quality of spectral light is useful for photosynthesis. Okay, ठीक है. Of course, water important component है. Minerals, pH, humidity. Of course, it is raining outside. You know what is humidity? If there is monsoon, do you expect the humidity to increase or decrease? Increase. अगर शायद यहाँ पे जस्ट आप बाहर अगर आप if you just have a hygrometer, if you check the humidity can be as high as 85, 90, 92, 93%. Okay, because of that the problem is what is the problem with very high humidity? Would you be able to sweat? What is the problem with humidity? ये सोचो. People feel discomfort. Okay. Sweat won't evaporate. That is a challenge. Number one. Second, in a closed surrounding, if there is very high humidity, can the molds or the fungus grow or would they not grow? They would grow. बहुत बार देखो घर पे sealant is there many times during and then some green spots try to come. What is that? That is fungus or mold growth. Okay, so that is of course not good for inside, which is also why the ACs में बहुत बार dry होता है, dry mode. They have a dehumidifier. They will absorb excess water or let's say excess moisture from water from the air. Sorry. Okay. थोड़ा सा आइडिया लग रहा है what are these? I have not even told you the details of it. अभी we are just exposing ourselves to very basic information. Fine. So till now, what is environment? Anything that surrounds us. It will include biotic factors as well as abiotic factors. Examples of abiotic factors बताओ. हाँ, एक बार सारे factors देखो. Air, salinity, soil, that is edaphic. Of course, temperature, light, water, minerals, pH. And the moment you first know them, then individually, जब इसको एक बार आप समझ जाओगे, then you will understand adaptations very well. Why should the species adapt? Because change हो रहे हैं. Why are mangroves able to survive in very high salinity? क्यों? Because they will have many adaptations in them. Okay. तो अभी salinity में dash करके अभी के लिए just लिखना in high salinity mangroves survive. And when I do mangroves with you, there's a specific section on mangroves, then you will be able to understand. The other name for soil factors is edaphic actually. So that is why I'm also telling you this question has been asked in certain state exams even. So then when you directly see the meaning of the term edaphic, you will get confused. Basically, edaphic is a broad term. It simply means thing related to soil, as simple as that. Anything that is related to soil is a edaphic factor. ठीक है कि soil की condition कैसे वैसे when I say soil has many things. Soil का texture होता है अपना. ठीक है? Okay. Biotic पे तो again when I do the food chain food web, I'll again come back to this fungus, bacteria, plants, animals, etc. इसको भी एक बार लिख लो. Just write this also if you've not written it yet. I think लिख लिया सबने ना. ठीक है. इसमें भी as I move along, then I'll also tell you RK क्या है difference, what is protist, but we are only doing it from the point of view of environment, right? In biology, you will be doing this in far more detail. Of course, biology आप अलग से नहीं पढ़ते हो. वो अभी हमारे we are not talking That is not the scope for our exam. Okay. I had also mentioned, for example, plants produce the food from photosynthesis. So they will take up carbon dioxide, they will take up water. Okay. In the presence of sunlight, what will happen? Sugars. Sugar is C6H12O6 and followed by oxygen. What happens during night? बताओ. Opposite. इसलिए बहुत बार बोला भी जाता है don't sleep in let's say over a big tree. Why? Because it will release carbon dioxide. Yes or no? So you should know a very basic cycle. This is one of the most important cycle that keeps the life possible. क्यों? If the plants don't make, let's say, sugars or food, what will deer eat? If deer does not eat, if the deer is very weak, what will the lion eat? And if the lion is also very weak, what will the vulture eat? सबका सोचना पड़ेगा ना. Yes or no? So that is how the nature ensures that life survives, and that is law of nature, right? Okay. This wala point, this I'll also tell you, so don't abhi write it abhi. Here, this is a graph from the NCERT. In this graph, what we tend to understand that when I say sunlight, not all sunlight is useful for photosynthesis. Only a certain band is useful for photosynthesis. वो band exactly कितना क्या है, I'll also tell you later on. But this is the whole idea. Okay, that a specific section of nanometers of light is actually absorbed, and not all light is absorbed. So if anybody thinks that कि जितनी भी sunlight आ रही है, every light is useful, नहीं, that's not true. Only a small section of that is actually used by plants in the process of photosynthesis. Okay, so this also we will write abhi later on. This is directly from the NCERT, that also we will see. Most probably in tomorrow's class, I'll also tell you with facts. In this band of how many nanometers is it good? How much percentage is actually used? And out of that percentage, how much is finally used for the creation of glucose and sugars? Okay, ठीक है. Next, come to this term also we have seen, ecology. अब इसमें दो एक, of course, the name of very prominent scientist also we will see that. अब ecology है क्या? Ecology main चीज है, कीवर्ड यहाँ पे studies. It is the study. Ecology studies the relationship between organisms and their environment. That is why I told you environment before. Ab environment, you already know what is environment. Yes. So it studies the relationship. The term was first used by Ernst Haeckel, a very prominent ecologist. In other words, this is a scientific study of the interaction of organisms with their physical environment and with each other. So number one thing is, ecology is the study of relationship between the organism and their environment. सबसे पहली चीज, right? Term was coined by Ernst Haeckel. So either you write the very first line or you write this line. Both of them are similar. You don't have to repeat the definitions again and again, है ना? So abhi tak I've only told you one person till now, that is Ernst Haeckel. Okay. And second is, what is the type? One is autoecology and one is synecology. Auto is study of individual organism or individual species. I gave you example of which area? जैसे काजीरंगा. It could have been any other area. This is just for our example. Kaziranga is in which state of India? Assam. Okay. And we saw how many national parks in Assam? 7. I've only told you 3. I've told you Kaziranga, I've told you Raimona, I've told Dingpatkai, which is why the other 4 you'll have a look at. Okay. Second, you'll also see Brahmaputra, which is north and which is south. Fine. Synecology, on the other hand, is a group of organisms of a different species, right, which are associated, etc. So here it is more broad based. That is why the name is synecology. So you are studying a group of organisms here. And in autoecology, we are only studying a individual organism. That is the whole difference between these two. That what is autoecology and what is synecology. Okay. That is one. Now, There are a couple of more terms that we'll also now see for ourselves. Okay, let's see this now. So one is habitat, okay, and environment. And with that, I will also very shortly introduce you to another term that is known as ecosystem. Fine. अब habitat अगर आप बना भी रहे हो तो you can make a simple diagram. You can create a huge ecosystem. In that there can be a habitat. Okay. जैसे अगर habitat is this is your ecosystem. That is exactly how this is drawn. I'll also tell you what ecosystem is. So habitat will then tell you habitat is a smaller space. Yes or no? Habitat by the way was in news also for some other reason. Okay, but that is the different habitat we are talking about. Habitat is the physical space or the area where the organism lives, right? For example, for you, habitat is ultimately the place where you go and rest. That is your habitat. Okay. Whereas here also the term environment is also very broad in nature, because habitat is, let's say, a place where you rest, but you can also still interact with other areas or no. So habitat in that sense, geographically speaking, is a shorter area where a specific species or an organism would rest, okay, where their proper abode is. And these concept of habitat is a concept, iski just बाद अभी concept पढ़ेंगे niche, okay. So habitat in that sense, please remember, is a final area where most of the activities of the organism are done, okay. But that does not mean the organism can only stay there. The organism can also interact with other areas. Number one thing is, so habitat in that sense, geography क्या हो जाए, geographically it is more localized. Yes. Habitat को आप ये समझो, habitat is like your home. आप रेस्ट करते हो होम में जाके, राइट? बट डज दैट मीन दैट ऑल योर 24/7 यू आर स्टिल इन द होम? नहीं. You can also move out. So for example, a lion in the search of a prey in the morning will go out and kill, and बाद में वापस आएंगे अपने habitat में. समझ में आ रहा है अपने को? तो habitat is that space. आप सोचो habitat is just like an address of a species. घूम घाम के वापस वो वहीं पे आएंगे habitat में अपने. But for terms of prey, okay, for even leisure etc, they may go outside also. Many times what would happen, हो सकता है यहाँ पे deers भाग गए हो यहाँ से. So sometimes they have to go out, they have to hunt, right? Similarly, let's say for you, your habitat is here. To study, you go to a library. To buy a book, you go to a certain bookshop. To eat, you go to a restaurant, etc, etc, etc. So in that sense, people have different roles to play. I hope we are clear on the term habitat. Okay, number one. When we have understood the term habitat, there's also one more term I'll tell you. Okay, 1 second. The other term that is there is niche. These two concepts are there, and we should understand these two concepts. So first we have seen is habitat. Okay, simple sa term kya hai? Habitat. Now there's also a term that is known as niche, and here please understand, niche is unique. चलो niche को मैं बहुत simple term से बताते हैं, फिर we'll see the comparison between the two. How many of you have seen Shark Tank? सुना है? Shark Tank में आपने सुना है बहुत बार? आपकी niche क्या है? What is that niche? अभी इसको भूल जाओ. Particular sector, very good point, right? What is the most particular sector that somebody would have, right? Let's say you want to open a startup, okay? Now you say सब मेरे को startup करना है, मैंने पूछा कहाँ पे करना है? तो आपने बोला मुझे advertise नहीं, वो तो location हो गया. आपने बोला मुझे advertisements बहुत पसंद है. I am very good with social media. Then I will ask you what is your niche? फिर आपने बोला let's say I know very prominently drop shipping, I know targeted ads, वो niche होती जा रही है आपकी. That in a big area you are narrowing something down. That is niche. That is the normal meaning of a niche. For any business to survive, they should have a niche. अगर आप बहुत broad हो जाओगे तो क्या होगा, आपके पास specific product नहीं होगा. Yes or no? Let's come to environment and then talk about niche. Okay, niche in the case of environment is the unique functional role a species has to play. पहली बात है unique role है और वो एक functional role है, right? इसको अंडरस्टैंड करने के लिए वही सिंपल सा एग्जांपल है हमारा, दैट फॉर एग्जांपल व्हाट इज द फंक्शन ऑफ लेट्स से अ लायन. द फंक्शन ऑफ लायन कैन बी either breeding, the main thing let's say they have to do, or killing the prey. Yes. So for this particular role, they will have a very specific area to do this. So niche becomes the unique specific role of a single species, which also means two species cannot have a same niche. क्यों? अगर होगा तो fight करेंगे वहां पे. So nature has its own unique ways. Elephants का niche अलग हो गया, lions का niche अलग है, birds का niche अलग है, and that is how they have evolved in the nature. If the species have same niche, आप इसको counter भी करो, let's say नहीं सर क्यों नहीं होना चाहिए niche? What is the law of the jungle? Survival of the fittest. Yes or no? Law of the jungle is survival, and that is how through millions of years of evolution, the species that you see in front of you, these are highly evolved species. They know how to survive. If it is very cold, the bear knows how to hibernate for 6 months. Yes or no? So when I say this, so niche जब हम बात करेंगे, niche का सबसे important दो कीवर्ड है with niche. One is unique and one is functional role. The function that the species has to do. अब think of yourself. Let's say you are right now as a student. Your unique functional role, let's say, is done in a class, or let's say is done in a library, or let's say in your room you may have a dedicated space to study. But your other roles can be done in other areas also, right? So for example, if you go out to eat, you will be in a environment with a lot of people. Okay, sleep के लिए घर पे हो सकता है या कहीं भी, you have a separate space to sleep. Yes or no? But functional role क्या है आपका is different. Similarly, the functional role of a species, lion, the main function it has to perform, उसके लिए एक specific जगह होगी, and that is how nature has evolved itself. Now, I want to ask from you, why is the knowledge of niche important to you? Habitat आप समझ रहे हो वो रह कहां पे रहा है? Habitat is where they live. What is niche? Where they perform their real function. So are we aware? So you may live in any PG, you may live anywhere, but let's say for the purpose of study, either you come to a class, you join a reading room, etc., etc. Now you see the difference between these two. So habitat is where you live. It's a simply your address or abode, whereas niche is your unique functional role. Now, अब आप मुझे बताओ, let's say all of you, what is the benefit of knowing a niche? फायदा क्या है? We can study that species, and more importantly also, you are right, but what is the importance I want to ask you still? क्या फायदा है niche पढ़ने का? Locations, yes, and अब देखो, if I know what is the unique function, let's say the lion is eating the prey in some area, it is hunting in some area, dolphin has a particular niche, for example. If I know the niche, can I conserve the species better? आप बताओ, can I conserve it better? The converse is also true, that somehow if species niche gets disrupted, will the species start to vanish? है ना? So both ways, if see, one is in all the areas you will see a species niche is getting disrupted. If you know that, आप उसको रोक सकते हो. Second point, if you know the knowledge of a niche, can you also save the species? This can be done. So for environmental conservationists, for forest officers, for the government, it is important to know, and so whenever a species is understood, we also understand the niche of that species. समझ में आ रहा है थोड़ा सा? ठीक है? तो अभी इसके लिए all you have to have is this keyword, unique functional role, the place of a species in an ecosystem. Ecosystem, abhi I'll just quickly tell you what that is. Okay, and this line has to be written exactly. A niche is unique for a species, which means no two species can have the same exact identical niche. No two species will have the same exact identical niche. Yes or no? Just if you're able to see this diagram, just for your reference, I have more diagrams as I move along. देखो यहाँ पे three different colored birds are there, and in the entire tree, the tree is color coded that every bird has a niche. A bird is there only at the top, a bird is there at the middle, and the bird is there at the bottom. This is nature's way also of avoiding conflict, right? And this also happens. Exact एक ऐसे एग्जाम्पल अपनी एनसीईआरटी में भी है, ओके, दैट व्हेन देयर इज अ थ्रेट ऑफ कंपटीशन, कंपटीशन अवॉइड करने के लिए एवरीबडी हैज देयर ओन एरिया. भाई आप ऊपर का एरिया ले रहे हो, हम आपको परेशान नहीं करेंगे, वी लेट्स से यूज द लोअर एरिया. यस और नो? So this also tells you that the species have a specific niche, and which is why they also avoid conflict. Can we understand this? Right? Different species occupying a different position. So again, please remember, niche is unique for a species. No two species will have an identical or exact niche. Yes or no? If you have written this, कहाँ पे अच्छा niche है? Okay. This is something that you can make. A simple Venn diagram. Okay. Either you make it like this or you make it in this manner also. Okay. Small and bigger circles. The biggest circle is environment, followed by habitat, and followed by niche. Okay, and we'll also write something on these lines. Let's say, for example, many species occupy the same habitat. एक बड़ा सा area है. In this area, the species are there, but their niche will be more localized and more specific. So for you, the habitat, for example, a bigger habitat, let's say, is ORN. Okay, but the niche for different species, let's say you have a specific class, somebody has a different reading room, etc. Niche सबकी different होगी अलग अलग. Many species have the same habitat, but they've performed different functions, right? Which is why the functional characteristics, okay, is referred to as niche. And this diagram will help you understand. Environment is then the whole big surrounding that you have. उसका smaller part है habitat, और उसमें भी सबसे localized and the most specific part of that is your niche. And this particular example is also very easy to understand. Habitat is like your address, and niche can be the profession, very specific. Okay, I think you would have. किसी ने लिख लिया इसको? चलो लिख लो. Just write this line also. Habitat of a species like its address. Okay, just also write one more homework. This I will start tomorrow, that particular topic, although I'll start some other topic now. Right, disruption of niche of, बस एक homework में लिखना अलग से, disruption of niche of vultures in India. Disruption of niche of vultures in India. ये पूरी case study मैं आपको बताऊंगा that how the vulture population in India drastically declined. And then the concept of niche, how is that related to that? And what was done for conservation of vultures? Disruption of niche. So एक तो है, these are proper let's say concepts. Many times when you read the books, and even for environment, you will not have a book which will integrate both things properly. इसमें current भी पूरा हुआ अच्छे से covered और static भी हो, so you will feel always that point. So which is why I'll give you a lot of case studies to understand. Okay. टॉकिंग ऑफ वल्चर्स, चलो ठीक है, वल्चर्स बाद में कर लेंगे फिर, अदरवाइज हाँ चलो अब आते हैं एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट टॉपिक पे. Habitat etc. you've seen. Now please write the heading levels of organization, and the other name for this levels of organization is nothing but ecological hierarchy. ecological hierarchy, ecological hierarchy, right? You know what is a hierarchy? Batao? Almost a chain of command or a ladder, right? Things like that. So here we are going to make a very simple ecological hierarchy for ourselves. So first make it in this manner. Just you have to write down the names. You have an individual, you have a population, you have a community, you have an ecosystem, biome, and biosphere. In the last three terms, I'll explain to you what these are. Individual, you just have a single fish. Now the fish interbred, you have multiple. That becomes a population. Okay. In from a population, you become a community. Now here you had, let's say, 5 or 10 fishes, but now you also have a fish. You have an oyster. Okay. You have, let's say, crab. So now populations and community में difference क्या हुआ? New types of species have come. So individual, when they multiply, they create a population. But when the population interbreeds with other also, then you create a community. Okay. When you write the community, also write down like this. There is also a minor community and there is also a major community. Right. Then you have an ecosystem. Ecosystem, then you have a biome and you have a biosphere. The geographical area in all of them will increase. Biosphere is huge. Then you have biomes and you have ecosystem. This sequence is sometimes very important to know. Start कहां से किया हमने? Individual से. The individual multiplies, it creates a population. In population, you also have all the same fishes, for example. Population and community में difference क्या है? Species are different, right? So now you have a more heterogeneous group. And then you have an ecosystem. Then you have a biome and you have a biosphere. ये sequence पहले तो बहुत clear होना चाहिए, and then we'll understand what this means. Now, ecosystem, one of the easiest definitions of ecosystem is, an ecosystem is a topic we'll do almost around 4 lectures. It is that big a topic. Ecosystem is known to be the structural and functional part of biosphere. तो अगर मैं आपसे उल्टा बोलूं तो गलत होगा. That biosphere is the structural and functional part of ecosystem. It will not make sense because this is the hierarchy, right? Ecosystem एक छोटा सा सेट है, बड़ा सेट कौन सा है? Biosphere. Ecosystem is structural and functional part of biosphere. अगर आपको ये नहीं पता है structural and functional part, then you are on the right track because I've not taught to you what is structural and functional. Abhi we've just seen the definition. What is the definition? Is very standard, but it is structural and functional part of biosphere. Na structural bata hai, na functional bata hai. Of course that is true. So this I will explain it to you, so don't worry about it. Right now what we've said, ecosystem is structural and functional part of biosphere. You have biomes and you have biosphere. ठीक. अब उल्टे से शुरू करते हैं, ज्यादा आसान होगा समझने में. Biosphere है. Biosphere is the living component of the intersection of three things: atmosphere, hydrosphere and lithosphere. Atmosphere मतलब air, hydrosphere मतलब water, lithosphere मतलब land या soil. ठीक है. तो biosphere वो है where life is possible. Anything where, anywhere where life is possible will have the intersection of this. So what is biosphere? Anything where the life is going to be possible. तो इसके लिए एक सिंपल सा ऐसा डायग्राम हम बनाते हैं. Biosphere is the intersection of atmosphere, hydrosphere and lithosphere. Main keyword is where life is possible. Where life is possible. Is that now fine, Monu? I think the Venn diagram is, you can see now. The intersection of this part should be very easy to understand now. हाँ, ये हो गया हमारा biosphere. ठीक. Earth of course has, Earth supports life. Yes. Why are we finding water ऑन मार्स, क्यों ढूंढ रहे हैं वाटर? ऑन मून ऑल्सो, ऑन मार्स ऑल्सो, वाई? That will also, that can ultimately, would it be able to support life or not? Yes or no? तो अपने पास we are seeing life here, and later on of course you see why are we going for different planets? We also want habitation in other areas also. ठीक, यहाँ पे इतनी भीड़ हो रही है, कुछ लोग चले जाएंगे तो कुछ भीड़ कम भी हो जाएगी, ठीक है? चलो, that is biosphere. So biosphere is what? Intersection of all these three components. Main thing is यहाँ पे क्या है? लाइफ पॉसिबल है, ठीक? अब बात करते हैं बायोम्स की. बायोम्स आर एक्चुअली, सिर्फ एक कीवर्ड याद रखो बायोम्स में, दीज आर बेस्ड ऑन क्लाइमेट, ठीक है? बायोम में द ओनली कीवर्ड यू हैव टू रिमेंबर इज बेस्ड ऑन अ सर्टेन टाइप ऑफ क्लाइमेट. ओके, न्यू दिल्ली विल हैव अ सर्टेन बायोम. ओके, बायोम जैसे सुना होगा कभी, नहीं तो टुंड्रा सुना है, टुंड्रा, टाइगा. ओके, course there are different equatorial biomes. Okay, tropical rainforests, they will have a different climate. Main thing is climate, and climate जो है, climate also determines the vegetation. It also determines the distribution of species. Can we say this? So this is also a very important point. So when I say biomes, okay, तो biomes में एक सिर्फ याद रखो, ये climate. अब आप सोचो पूरी अर्थ है, अर्थ is supporting life, that is biosphere. In the biosphere there will be many biomes. तो बिग पार्ट क्या हो गया? बायोस्फीयर. स्मॉल पार्ट क्या है? बायोम्स. बायोम्स में क्लाइमेट होगा. उन बायोम्स के अंदर क्या है? इकोसिस्टम. इकोसिस्टम कैन बी एज स्मॉल एज अ पॉन्ड इकोसिस्टम. फॉर एग्जांपल, पॉन्ड का इकोसिस्टम हो सकता है, लेक इकोसिस्टम, फॉरेस्ट इकोसिस्टम, डेजर्ट इकोसिस्टम. दीज आर स्मॉलर पार्ट्स विद इन अ बायोम. नाउ डज दैट मेक सेंस? थोड़ा थोड़ा सा आइडिया लग रहा है? सो आई स्टार्टेड विद अ बिग एंटिटी, दैट इज बायोस्फीयर. बायोस्फीयर में यू हैव मल्टीपल बायोम्स. जैसे अफ्रीका में यू हैव अ सर्टेन biomes around the desert, also around the tropical areas, subtropical areas, which means tropical, temperate, etc. And in the biomes you have specific ecosystems, right? Jैसे if I say even New Delhi has a certain biome, but within that, even in New Delhi, if I go into the areas close to Aravallis, वो थोड़ा desert type का area हो जाएगा. Have we heard about the expansion of Aravallis? Okay, leading to more and more desertification, right? Similarly, you have a lot of ridge, the ridge and the forests in the region. You have also certain lakes around. So काफी points हम बता सकते हैं. So ecosystem will have that. Now when you see the diagram of an ecosystem, after that we'll also write these definitions also. One second. So what do you see? Huge part is the biosphere, smaller part is biome. Biome is based on climate. सिर्फ climate याद रखेंगे, सबसे आसान तरीका याद करने का, climate. And you have ecosystem. Now for environment, the best way or the smallest functional unit to understand is ecosystem. That is why all the analysis is done via ecosystem. Ecosystem अभी हमने क्या देखा था? It is a structural and a functional part. Why is it a functional part? Because ecosystem serves very important functions, and as a unit of study अच्छा होता है. जैसे कि for example, if you have to understand somebody's body, the best unit या smallest unit of study becomes cell. अब यहाँ पे individual cannot be the best way to understand, because you have to talk about interactions also. So I take an ecosystem, and an ecosystem can be as small as a tree, and it can be even big, like even let's say proper desert, etc. So that is a good way to analyze the interactions. Now there will be a lot of officers, or let's say people of census, conservationists. If they have to analyze an area, that is why they analyze the ecosystem. From that they can extrapolate and understand about the biodiversity of that region, the threat it faces, etc., etc. Are you getting some idea about what the things are? Yes. So you have seen 6 things, and after that now one line each we'll also write. One is an individual, then you have a population, then you have community. I told you community could have been major and minor. Minor community में लिखो bracket करके, it is dependent on, the minor community is dependent on. अच्छा, माइनर में 2 चीजें. पहली बात, माइनर कम्युनिटी इज स्मॉल इन साइज, शॉर्ट इन साइज. स्मॉल इन साइज, ये शॉर्ट इन साइज. दूसरा लिखो, इट इज डिपेंडेंट ऑन नेबरिंग कम्युनिटीज. इट इज डिपेंडेंट ऑन नेबरिंग कम्युनिटीज. जैसे बहुत सिंपल एग्जांपल आप सोचो माइनर कम्युनिटीज का, लेट्स से देयर इज एन एरिया, इन दैट एरिया देयर आर वेरी लिमिटेड प्लांट्स, से प्लांट्स है ही नहीं, तो क्या होगा, दैट कम्युनिटी इज डिपेंडेंट ऑन, लेट्स से देयर आर सम rodents from outside. Rodents क्या करेंगे, they will have some seeds, they will bring those seeds and somehow put it in some other area. जैसे आपने देखो elephants also do the same thing. The bees, they take the pollen, they deposit the pollen in some other area. Let's say in an area you don't have a particular forest or plants, there is almost a simple soil, तो वहां से कोई आया तो this community which is small in size, it is dependent on the neighbors, so neighbors bring either seeds or pollens etc, from that a new community can start. That is why this is known as minor community, they are dependent on somebody else. Major community is big in size, and second it is only dependent on sunlight, that's it, so they are relatively independent. They would be relatively independent, and that is the main, let's say, outcome you're understanding for us. ठीक है, so that is one part to understand here, major and minor, right? Now I was talking to you about जैसे मैंग्रोव्स के बारे में, सुंदरबंस, हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू हर्ड अबाउट सुंदरबंस? सुंदरबंस कर्नाटका में है या गुजरात में है? वेस्ट बंगाल, ठीक है, तो ऐसे ध्यान रखेंगे, अभी हमने वेस्ट बंगाल, यू हैव वर्ल्ड्स लार्जेस्ट, दिस इज नॉट इंडियाज लार्जेस्ट. इफ समथिंग इज इंडियाज लार्जेस्ट वुड इट बी वर्ल्ड्स लार्जेस्ट, और इफ समथिंग इज वर्ल्ड लार्जेस्ट वुड इट बी इंडियाज लार्जेस्ट? ठीक है, सो ऑफ कोर्स व्हेन आई से वर्ल्ड लार्जेस्ट, अगर मैं पूछूं इंडियाज लार्जेस्ट क्या है तो भी यहीं पे होगा, यस और नो? ठीक है, सुंदरबंस हैज वर्ल्ड्स लार्जेस्ट मैंग्रोव फॉरेस्ट. नाउ बेस्ड ऑन व्हाट आई टोल्ड यू, इन व्हिच कॉन्टेक्स्ट डिड वी सी मैंग्रोव्स टुडे? डिस्ट्रक्शन ऑफ मैंग्रोव्स इज हैपनिंग. चलो और कुछ जो हमने बोला, विद मैंग्रोव्स आई टोल्ड यू इन दिस स्पेसिफिक कॉन्टेक्स्ट, ठीक है, they are able to tolerate high amounts of salinity, okay, even that is a good point. So remember in the area of West Bengal these are there, that is just that image, बाकी चलो आएंगे, अब आते हैं इस पे. Now if you have not written any specific thing you can add it, ठीक है, हम बात करते हैं individual, तो of course we are not defining what is an individual. Population से देखते हैं, right? Population is a group of organisms of the same species. मेन चीज क्या है यहाँ पे, same species occupying a defined area in a specific time, that is a population for us, and we are of course covering the ecological hierarchy, right? सुंदरबंस भी इसे by the way आप बहुत बार देखोगे अपनी क्लासेस में, तो ऐसे जो मेन predominant areas हैं around India for biodiversity, I will be covering it either through infographics or through images or through current affairs or some stories. Okay, so population is the same group of organisms, okay, same species occupying a defined area. कम्युनिटी की केस में बाकी सब चीज अच्छी है, बट यहां पे क्या है, बस कीवर्ड देखो, मल्टीपल स्पीशीज. सो हियर इट इज नॉट द सेम स्पीशीज, कम्युनिटी में क्या होता है, मल्टीपल स्पीशी है. दूसरा वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, दे आर नेम्ड आफ्टर डोमिनेंट प्लांट फॉर्म, राइट, विच मीन्स आपने सुना होगा नाम ग्रासलैंड कम्युनिटी. क्यों है नाम ग्रासलैंड? इट इज नेम्ड आफ्टर बिकॉज इट इज डोमिनेटेड बाय ग्रासेस. दिस इज द डिफरेंस. इसमें हर्ब्स भी हो सकती है, ट्रीज भी हो सकते हैं, बट इट इज डोमिनेटेड बाय ग्रासेस, हेंस द नेम इज ग्रासलैंड. तो इसमें अ पॉसिबल क्वेश्चन कैन बी, फॉर एग्जांपल, दैट इन अ कम्युनिटी एटसेट्रा, how are they named? Is it the dominant animal form or is it the dominant plant form? That is how a question can be. है क्या? It is a dominant plant form. और इसी में of course I have already told you what is major and what is minor. ठीक है? Mostly yes. ठीक है? Then we say ecosystem is defined as a structural and a functional part. Right now, even this is fine for you. We will also expand on these both two meanings as we move along. It is a structural part and a functional unit of a biosphere. इसमें community होगी, okay, they are interacting, exchanging the materials. That makes sense. If I say in an ecosystem, would you have biotic components or abiotic components or both? You'll have both in this, okay? So ecosystem will have both these components. That again becomes an important unit for us to understand, right? So even that is true. Structural and a functional part, ठीक है, community होगी, etc. That is also one thing that you understand, right? Okay. So population, community, ecosystem, ठीक है. Up, we have used two terms, okay, structural and functional. Let me just explain these two terms, then we'll move ahead. देखो, structural means it is simply the pattern or the organization of organisms, etc., in an area. For example, this is a class. Do you see a pattern of organization in this? कैसे? There is a way of chairs that are there, right? हर चीज distributed है. If you see this in environmental sense, right? Aquatic जैसे ecosystem मान लो, example ले लेते हैं एक aquatic. This is the bottom area. Some organisms are found in the bottom. Some are found in the top. Some are floating. So based on that area, there's a proper structured manner in which species are distributed. This is also seen in other areas. जैसे अगर मैं बात करूं किसी और एरिया की, जैसे some areas, tropical regions will have tall canopy forests. Some will have short forests. Some will have shrubs, grasses, herbs. So there is a proper order, एक patterned organization है. This is a structure. Based on ecosystem, it will vary. चाहे वो pond हो, चाहे वो lake हो, चाहे वो desert हो, man-made or natural. There is a way in which things are structured that is known as the structural part, right? Functional part में, remember ecosystem has 4 functions. 2 functions are very famous. I'll also tell you the other 2. The main functions of an ecosystem include nutrient cycling, लिखेंगे इसको. Nutrient cycling, you have energy flow. अपना पूरा एक lecture at least or even 2 lectures will only go on these 4 terms, because every term has a lot of detail. 4 terms I've mentioned. One is nutrient cycling, one is energy flow, one is ecological succession, and last में homeostasis. Just one, I'll tell you brief because these are all relative, proper सारे proper concepts हैं. Nutrient cycling नाम से समझ में आ रहा है, how the nutrients like phosphorus, like nitrogen, okay, calcium, potassium, how they move, right? These cycles are very important. Every year you will find question on at least one cycle, okay? Nutrient cycling is one such element, number 1. Similarly, you have energy flow. ठीक है, एनर्जी कैसे फ्लो हो रही है, अभी हमने एक सिंपल सा एग्जांपल देखा. प्लांट्स मेक द फूड. Plants, let's say, are eaten up by deers or rabbits, and they are eaten up by lion, for example. But that is not the only way. There are other cycles also, more complicated cycles. So we see in this topic, we'll see food chain, we will see food webs, we will see ecological pyramids. Okay, how exactly the energy flow happens, how is the energy lost, काफी important concepts हैं यहाँ पे भी, we'll see that. Then there is a Okay, I think now we should be back. People online, कहाँ पे, which part was there? Where did you miss out? I'll just repeat that once. नहीं, एक बार इनसे पूछिए online ना. You can just drop a comment. I think